The Barefoot Lawyer Reports on China is proud to announce the publication of a report on Confucius Institutes and the Chinese Communist Party's infiltration of American academic institutions. To read the report, which was published by the Catholic University of America's Center for Human Rights, please go to catholic.edu/chr and visit our Research and Analyses page. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Barefoot Lawyer Reports on China podcast. My name is Will Deathridge, the producer, and joining me as always is Chen Guangcheng.
Hello everyone, I'm glad to see you here again.
Yeah, today we're going to report on a very important issue, which is Chinese infiltration of American educational institutions. Specifically, we'd like to promote a research paper that was recently published at the Catholic University of America's Center for Human Rights at catholic.edu/chr. The report is titled, "The Lingering Threat of Confucius Institutes, Chinese Soft Power Influence in American Education." So, before we touch on some of the themes of the paper, Guangcheng, could you explain to us what Confucius Institutes are?
Yeah, Confucius was a very important person. Yeah, he is very, very important. He influenced the Chinese traditional culture a lot. But, in fact, the CCP just used his name to do the censorship and the spy work in the U.S. The CCP tried to use his name to influence the education here, to influence the young people. The CCP tried to use that way to destroy our universal values of freedom of speech and human rights and democracy, the rule of law, like that.
So, Guangcheng, tell us a little bit about these institutes. Where are they? And what do they do?
In fact, the CCP set up a large Confucius institutes in the whole world, especially in Western countries. In the U.S., they set up a lot of that in the universities, even in the high school.
Right.
So the CCP give the money to try to influence the universities. They prevented activists to speak about human rights and the rule of law in the universities. Another work is, the institute use the Chinese student to do the spy work. If the Chinese people talk about human rights, democracy, the rule of law, and the human rights prosecution in mainland China, the Chinese student will report to the CCP's embassy. And the CCP's embassy will report to Beijing. Beijing will order the police to come to the student family to threaten their parents. So that happened a lot in the U.S. The Confucius Institute work in the high school, even middle school, like that.
Yeah, those are called Confucius classrooms, right? The ones in the high schools and elementary schools, yeah?
Yeah, so I think we cannot ignore that. In fact, the CCP still use different way to infiltrate, for example, the companies, the government officials, Hollywood, like. So the CCP use different way to do that in the U.S.
Yeah, now in recent years, there have been reports that significant amounts of funding have been cut for Confucius Institutes, and a lot of universities no longer have them. Actually, a substantial amount of Confucius Institutes have closed, as this report, which will feature in the description, mentions. But it also says, Guangcheng, and if you could speak to this would be great, that even though Confucius Institutes are closing, the Communist Party is still very active in infiltrating education. Is that right? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, of course. Our, Bill Saunders and me work with the student to do the report,
right,
to research about that.
Yeah, it's the one that's on our website.
I think, this report is very, very important to know. I encourage the U.S. people to visit it and to read it, and you will understand how the CCP is infiltrating here. And even, in the US, of course, more and more people understand how evil the CCP. Since several years ago, some universities closed the Confucius Institutes. That is good news. But the CCP just changes the organization's name and keeps doing the infiltration work here.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just changing the name.
Yeah, just change the name. So the organization still work. I think we should ask the U.S. government to investigate more about CCP's infiltration.
Yeah. Guangcheng, have you ever suspected that these kinds of organizations have stopped you from speaking at organizations or places?
Several times. Yeah.
Can you talk about one of them?
Yeah. For example, several years ago, the Purdue University gave me an invitation. They wanted me to talk about human rights and my story and how the CCP used the new technology to do the censorship. We call, and when they invited me, the Chinese student they work for the Confucius Institute there wrote a letter to Purdue's leader to ask them to stop my speech plan. And of course, the college's president told me we should protect everyone's freedom of speech in Purdue. And later, the student said, if you keep invite him to come here, we will plan to do a protest. So when I arrived there, looks like the leader a little worried, so they set up the police. And when I give a speech, the student tried to give me a hard question to answer. But for me, it's okay. I know that. I answer them. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, that's not one time. That happened several times.
Right.
Yeah,
and we'll have to talk about those in future episodes. But for now, we encourage all of you to look at this report at catholic.edu/chr under our research and analyses page. Guangcheng, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope the U.S. people will understand more about the evil CCP. Thank you. See you next time.
The Barefoot Lawyer Reports on China is currently sponsoring an essay contest for students of all ages. This year's prompt asks writers to describe a human rights issue in communist China that they think deserves more attention, what current efforts are addressing it, and what can be done in the future to resolve it. To learn more about this contest, please go to catholic.edu/chr and visit our Human Rights Essay Contest page.